Today, we're going to explore a profound and deeply personal search, the modern quest for individuals' spiritual meaning. This is a journey that so many have taken, a search for truth that happens outside the familiar walls of traditional, dogmatic structures. It is, in essence, an esoteric history of how the modern self came to be. So let's lay out our path. We'll begin with the crisis that set this quest in motion. From there, we'll examine three distinct and fascinating responses. 1. A path of radical rebellion. 2. A quiet journey deep into the self. And 3. The creation of entirely new sacred spaces. And finally, we will bring it all together to see what this long journey means for spirituality in our own secular age. All right, so where does a story like this truly begin? Well, it starts not with a bang, but with a slow, deep crack in the very foundations of Western society. It begins with the fading of the old certainties, the crumbling of the great narratives that for centuries told people who they were and what their lives meant. And this right here is the fundamental question. It's the question that animates every movement, every philosophy we're about to discuss. When the old maps to meaning are no longer reliable, how does one possibly navigate existence? Where do you find your truth? Think of it this way. Sociologists call it the disenchantment of the world. As the old systems, the grand religious and social structures lose their sense of magic, their sacred power, well, they stop providing that deep, grounding sense of purpose. And what's left in their place is a kind of void, an existential vacuum, a profound sense of being adrift. But the human spirit, you see, cannot long tolerate a vacuum. This collapse of external authority gave rise to a powerful and necessary response. It created a profound need to affirm the autonomy of the individual. If truth could no longer be found out there in the institution, then it had to be found in here, within the self. Now, this new declaration of the individual's power found what is perhaps its most radical, and certainly its most controversial, expression in our first path. This is a path of total rebellion, personified by the infamous occultist Aleister Crowley. For Crowley, you see, traditional religion wasn't just outdated, it was a poison. He launched what could only be called an ontological revolt, a rebellion against the very being of religious domination. He saw these institutions as tools designed to make the masses docile, paralyzing their minds with the promise of a fictitious paradise, just to make them accept the inequalities of this world. His answer was not reform, it was revolution. And this is his foundational axiom. The most famous and famously misunderstood phrase in all of modern esotericism. It's the central tenet of his philosophy, Thelema. This wasn't just a catchy phrase. It was meant to be the proclamation of a new age, a new eon, where the old repressive age of gods and priests was over and a new era centered on the unique will of the individual had dawned. Now, this is absolutely crucial to understand, because there is a vast gulf between the common misconception and the esoteric meaning. On the one hand, you have the popular idea of do what thou wilt, anarchic lawlessness, pure hedonism, just satisfying your every selfish whim. But the actual esoteric meaning is something else entirely. It's the apotheosis of freedom, yes, but one that requires the strictest discipline imaginable. And here is the key. True will is not about what you want in a given moment. It's about what you are at your deepest core. It is your unique purpose, your true orbit in the universe. And discovering this true will is not a matter of simple desire. It is the object of profound, difficult, esoteric work. And once discovered, it is to be enacted without deviation. It's not license. It is the ultimate form of personal responsibility. But of course, not everyone sought to burn the old world down. For another kind of thinker, the most radical act of autonomy wasn't found in a loud external rebellion. No, it was found in the profound quiet of self-reflection. The journey turned inward. The philosopher Georges Gusdorf had this remarkable idea he called the writings of the self. He argued that when we write about ourselves, in a journal, a memoir, an autobiography, we're doing something far more significant than just documenting events. We are, in fact, performing an initiatory act of self-creation. We are claiming autonomy over our own story. And Gusdorf's process follows a kind of initiatory path. It begins with acknowledging a fundamental alienation, that shocking discovery that you are, in some ways, a stranger to yourself. Then, you begin the investigation, using writing as your tool to give some form to your fluid identity. Through this work, you begin to solidify a personal identity, to assemble a life that is true to itself. And this culminates in the assumption of responsibility, the profound knowledge that the world and your truth in it proceeds from you. So every time we engage in this act of self-writing, we are, in a sense, performing a psychological and moral secession. We are declaring our independence from our environment, from the narratives imposed upon us. We are making the claim, as Gustorf says, that my life must have a meaning, and that meaning will be authored by me. Okay, so we've examined a path of outright rebellion and one of deep introspection. But what if autonomy isn't found in standing alone? What if the path to finding the self is actually through finding a new kind of us, by building entirely new sanctuaries for the soul? Look at this Masonic illustration. What you're seeing here is more than just a picture, it's a vision. Groups like the Freemasons offer the world a universal brotherhood. This was a cosmopolitan ideal, a space that could transcend the hatreds of nationalism and politics, a place where, even on the battlefield, a shared humanity could be found. What these initiatic groups did was build a microcosmos, a small, ordered world, as a refuge from the alienation of the larger world. Within these lodges and temples, through shared rituals and symbols, they created a space of solidarity and purification, a place where individuals could experience a kind of human harmony that was often impossible to find outside. But how do you give these new communities a sense of legitimacy and gravity? Well, you use a powerful sociological tool that the historian Eric Hobsbawm called invented tradition. This is the process of creating a set of practices, rituals, symbols, stories that imply a deep continuity with a suitable, often ancient, historical past. It's a way of making the new feel timeless. The Rosicrucian order, AMORC, provides a perfect example of this. They masterfully crafted a lineage for themselves that stretched all the way back to the mystery schools of ancient Egypt. And they co-opted major historical figures like Benjamin Franklin, claiming them as one of their own. Now, this wasn't just fanciful storytelling. It was a brilliant strategy to legitimize their teachings and distinguish themselves in a very crowded modern spiritual marketplace. So we have seen rebellion, we've seen introspection, and we've seen the invention of new communities. These are three very different paths, but as we'll see, they are all converging on the same destination. Let's now bring these threads together and understand the single revolutionary principle at work here and the enormous challenge these traditions now face. When you look across all of these paths, you see one profound common thread, a complete transvaluation of the sacred. The sacred is no longer imagined as a terrifying external divinity demanding obedience. Instead, the very location, the locus of the sacred shifts. It moves from the institution to the individual. Authority is transferred from the priest to the inner self. The goal is no longer salvation from above, but the discovery of one's own true will, one's authentic I. Spirituality becomes something lived on a deeply individual plane. And this really defines the new spiritual quest. It's not about submitting to a distant, unknowable God. It's about transcending the small self through a personal, direct relationship, a relationship with the thou, with the mystery that is not self. It's an encounter that affirms and expands the individual, rather than diminishing it. And yet, here is the great paradox. These traditions, built on deep esoteric work, on long initiation, on historical narrative, they now face an unprecedented crisis of relevance. Freemasonry, for instance, has seen its influence decline by some 90%. Why? Because they are traditions built for a world of deep focus and long-term commitment, and they find themselves adrift in our globalized, atomized age of social media, of fleeting light ideas, and a culture of pure immediacy. And so this leaves us with a final and rather sobering question. The esoteric quest to discover and author an authentic self was once the domain of initiates in secret societies. But in our modern world of endless information and fleeting digital identities, that very quest has become the central and perhaps the most difficult challenge facing every single one of us.